This week at the Rock Church, Pastor Stovall preached an awesome message about the need and impact of great mothers, but also has a solemn warning about the weighty decisions that mothers have to make every day. One of the things that stuck out to me in this message was the statement that Pastor made about Ruth being in the lineage of David, and that David was a direct descendant from Ruth and Boaz. One of the things that's interesting about that is that when you read in the beginning of Matthew, you actually find that Ruth is listed among the lineage of David, but also in confines to the lineage of Christ. What's interesting about that is that the actions that Ruth took with regards to Naomi, when Naomi said, "You've served me well enough, it's time to go home to your families, go home to your households." What's interesting is that what Ruth did set her up for that. Think about it like this. Ruth tells Naomi, "No, I want to stay with you. I'll go where you go. I'll eat what you eat. I'll live where you live. Your gods will be my gods." And that statement of sacrifice, that statement of submission, is what single-handedly positioned Ruth in the place that she needed to be to meet Boaz. And that relationship, her and Boaz, ended up becoming the relationship that bore her the children that eventually led on to Christ. That's something interesting to think about. The idea that the trajectory of your life is determined by your choices. The trajectory of your family's life is determined by the choices you make every day. Pastor made a statement at the beginning of his message. And you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and read it to you. I've got it here in my notes, so let's take a look here. Pastor said that I have one very important question for you. And he said that question is, in which direction is your house headed? If you point your vehicle toward Chicago, but you're trying to get to Los Angeles, you're probably not going to get there, right? But also, it means a lot more than that. It means that, what is it you're facing? What is it you're pointing your attention to, your heart? What is your heart turned toward? Something that's interesting in the Old Testament, when the children of Israel were moving through the wilderness, they came, they had the tabernacle, on all of their tents and everything. And the mandate by Moses and by God was not to do what the society would have said for them to do, which was, put their backs to get to each other and to face out from the camp, right? So that if anybody sneaks up on them, they can attack and they can be aware. That was the opposite for the children of Israel, right? They put the tabernacle in the midst of the camp. And the reason for that was very strategic. That way, the first thing they saw whenever they awoke and the last thing that they saw whenever they went to bed was the Spirit of God, the presence of God. And that was interesting to me, that was a very strategic positioning, a very strategic statement about where they need to lie their focus, where they need to put their attention every single day. First thing they see when they wake up, presence of God. Last thing that they see whenever they go to bed, presence of God. And so the question is, what would the trajectory of your family be if you made that choice? See, we all have that moment of that option available to us today. We can either keep our attention on God, or we can keep our attention on politics or on the world or on Hollywood or whatever your vice is. And the question is, what will you do to direct your family toward God, direct your children toward God? Could it be that your lineage, your children or your children's children or your family somewhere along down the road has a massive, incalculable impact on the kingdom of God? It's possible. But what determines their future and their success is the way that we decide to do that now. In which direction is your house headed? Food for thought.